Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday morning to all of you. I am Andrew Langer, in for Larry O'Connor today, in for Larry O'Connor for a couple of days. Joining me, as always, as she does on Mondays, is Julie Gunlock, who made it into the studio despite the treacherous conditions. Hello,
I did.
Julie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Anyway, we got a great show coming up. Listen, on this hour, we're going to be talking with Terry Schilling from the American Principles Project. Going to be joined by Joe DeGeneva, as he does every Monday morning here as well. We've got Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch in the 8 a.m. hour. And Ben Klein, who's a congressman from the 6th Congressional District, he's going to be joining us also in the 8 a.m. hour. So lots coming up on the show today. Listen, in the last hour, we were talking about this. I asked the question as Mitt Romney raised it. Mitt Romney was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he is promising, Julie, that he is, or not promising, but he's considering he's not going to vote for Trump. He may vote for Biden. And I asked the question about just how one defines an authoritarian dictator, especially how can you be an authoritarian dictator if you're shrinking the size and scope of federal power. We don't really have an answer to that. But let's go here. Let's go to where Romney is talking. Michael, let's go ahead and play cut number 1 here.
Do you think a second Trump term would look like?
Well, I think if you can look at the last few months of his presidency, you'd suggest that that's the kind of thing you might see, that he would not have the generals around him as he did last time, people of judgment and experience offering advice, and in some cases restraining his impulses. Instead, he would have people around him encouraging his impulses and perhaps adding to them. And I'm afraid you'd find the nation more divided. Look, our nation doesn't need to be divided right now. A campaign based on anger and hate may win at the ballot box temporarily, but it tears the country apart. The other day, the former president said that we are at greater threat for what is within. I think that was in some respects a self-own, because what's within, if he were to become elected president again, is a campaign of retribution and anger and hate. That's not what America's based on. America was based on the idea of in God we trust and united we stand. Divided we fall. Divided nation is not the nation America is intended to be.
So you need to come together, but you have to come together on my terms. Listen, I have no doubt.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Yeah, and exactly which party is dividing people? Who called us the deplorables?
Right. This is exactly correct.
Irredeemable?
It is a situation in which I have no doubt that regardless of who is running on either side of the ticket, right? It doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump or if it's Ron DeSantis versus Gavin Newsom. It is going to be the 2024 election is going to be about Donald Trump. Why? Because the Democrats don't want to run on their record. They're going to make it about Donald Trump, and that's going to put whatever Republican candidate on the defensive and having to defend Donald Trump. The media makes it all about Donald Trump. But my point about retribution is, which party is it that has spent the last 3 years, right, almost a full 3 years, going after anybody who was remotely near Capitol Hill on January 6th?
Yeah.
You want to talk about retribution, going after some poor grandmother who happened to wander into the Capitol, who wandered into the Capitol on January 6th because that's where the mob was going and didn't do anything violent or horrific. But to go after these people 3 years later is the very definition of retribution and anger and hate. I'm sorry.
Well, who's trying to put the Republican nominee in jail?
Right. Right. Yes.
What are we talking about? Romney's going on and on about, this isn't we can't have a country based on hate, right?
Yes.
Like, what is this? This is Oprah talk. This is this sort of what we saw with those university professors up there, prattling on, babbling on. What does this even mean? Is Romney not paying attention? Who is the party who's trying to put a current presidential nominee in jail? Doesn't that smack more of totalitarian?
Yes. Authoritarianism. But oh, by the way, so it's entirely possible, right? And we asked this question. I've talked about this. This idea of the so-called Republicans who are possibly going to vote for Biden in the 2024 election, which again is some kind of form of mass delusion here. Here is Mitt Romney. asked who he might be voting for. Let's play cut number 3.
Joe I would like to vote for is Joe Manchin, and I'm not going to tell you right now who I'm going to vote for. Fortunately, I'm in a state that that's not a swing state. It's not a state in contest. Whoever I vote for in Utah, Utah is going to be for Donald Trump, so it's kind of irrelevant. But I typically vote for Ann for that reason.
Do you think that Senator Manchin's going to run?
No, I don't, but I wish he would.
You're going to encourage him to?
I wish he'd be the Democratic nominee. And by the way, there are a couple of Democrats I might think of that would be a better nominee, I think, than President Biden.
Just to put a fine point on it, though, it sounds like you're not ruling out voting for President Biden.
I'm not going to describe who I'll rule out other than President Trump. I just, you have a setting where you have someone who's too old and someone else who's a little too nutty. And where are you going to vote on that basis? And by the way, in my view, bad policy we can overcome as a country.
Yeah.
We have in the past. Yeah. Bad character is something which is very difficult to overcome.
Wait,
Bad
all right.
character.
That is such a garbage statement.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
I'm sorry, but the reality is no. Listen, when you can't zero out federal agencies, for decades after the crises that gave rise to them have passed. No, America, it's very difficult to get over bad policy. In fact, we have great Supreme Court case law on that very precept. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I love also Romney suddenly saying, character matters.
Yes.
And that he won't rule out Biden. Okay. And one of the reasons is he won't rule out Biden based on character.
Yes.
Right. That suggesting that Biden has such a good character. This is a man who will not recognize his own granddaughter. This is a man who thinks it's okay what Hunter Biden did with prostitutes, with drugs.
Right.
I mean,
time out for a second.
Hold on. This is a man who claims he lost his older son in war. Okay.
Yes.
This man has zero character. But Romney thinks Trump's worse. Makes total sense.
I want to continue to talk about this because he goes on to talk about impeachment, and I want to say that for the next segment here. But here's the thing that gets me about this issue of character and running for president. It's not as though Mitt Romney was not thoroughly pilloried by the left and the leftist press when he ran for president, right? You talk about the myopia of this situation. Mitt Romney was made out to be, again, in the post-George W. Bush. Remember, when George W. Bush was president, George W. Bush was Hitler, according to the left.
Right.
When Mitt Romney ran for president, John McCain ran, John McCain was Hitler, according to the left. And then when Mitt Romney ran for president, again, they made Mitt Romney out to be the next coming of Adolf Hitler. And yet here is Mitt Romney conveniently forgetting how the press worked to destroy him way back during the 2012 election. Listen, we will continue in just a moment, but first, it's 6:15 a.m. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives. Here's Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL, making sense of the markets, because generational wealth doesn't build itself. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
We talk about this issue of character, Julie, as you point out. And we are engaging in an investigation. And here's the important thing, right? And, of course, the left wants to make this all about, you can't hold Joe Biden accountable for the sins of his son. Well, listen, we have to have an investigation into the business relationship between Joe Biden and his son while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. And this is where the Romney interview on Meet the Press goes off the rails here. Let's start here with cut number 5. Romney's asked about the evidence for impeachment.
House Republicans have signaled that they may vote as early as this week on an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, despite the fact that they haven't shown yet a direct link between Hunter Biden's business dealings and President Biden. Have you
Except for the money
seen
going into
any
his account.
evidence that President Biden has committed high crimes and misdemeanors?
No, I don't see any evidence of that at all. I think before you begin an impeachment inquiry, you ought to have some evidence, some inclination that there's been wrongdoing, and so far there's nothing of that nature that's been provided.
So are you opposed to the impeachment inquiry?
Well, if I were in the House, I'd vote against it, unless they were able to bring forward evidence that suggests that there were a high crime or misdemeanor that had been committed. But so far, that hasn't been the case. Look. Fortunately, for most people, we're not responsible for the misdeeds of our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. Nothing in my family I'm embarrassed about. But President Biden's son, Hunter, is obviously been a very unsavory person and has had some extremely damaging personal foibles, including a drug habit and so forth. That's not President Biden, and we're not going to impeach someone because of the sins of their kids.
Okay.
All right, Julie. It's just about an unfortunate drug habit.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to start talking about this now as we've sort of the Miranda Devine list of all the things that Hunter Biden was doing?
Yeah, but honestly, he is using the left-wing DNC talking points. This is sort of Biden campaign talking points of there have been no direct. I mean, and we've seen this. We've seen this sort of evolution of Biden saying, I don't know anything, and then, I never met with them, and I never discussed business. And, so we've seen this evolution, and Romney is picking up those talking points. And honestly, I think Romney, frankly, he wants book deals. He wants CNN contracts. He wants possibly a position in a Biden administration.
Oh, sure.
He doesn't care about the future of this country, and I'm just sickened to hear Romney talk this way. And look, really, Romney's made me sick for a lot of years.
Sure, yes.
But this is a new low.
Well, listen, it's funny. I was a Republican Party official in Maryland until 2011. And Romney was one of the reasons, and the 2012 race was one of the reasons why I got out of that, because I knew inside I could not be in a position anymore where I would have to mouth support for a candidate that I could not support. But again, turning around, given that this is the insane thing, maybe it's a form of Stockholm syndrome. I don't know, or Trump derangement syndrome, or whatever syndrome you want to put in there. But given the amount of time the media spent trying to paint Mitt Romney as the next coming of the great dictator, one would think that he would know better and not be turning around and talking about this. By the way, we are going to be talking with about the House impeachment vote and the inquiry with Joe DeGeneva in the next hour. In the 8 a.m. hour, we're going to be joined by Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. We've got Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia's 6th Congressional District. He's going to be joining us as well. We're going to ask him about this. Here's the thing that gets me about this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it, Julie? Where you say, we don't have any evidence to support an inquiry, therefore we're not going to have an inquiry, which would gain the evidence that we want to get to actually go forward with an impeachment. Yeah. It's like okay, we know the standard is much lower for an indictment, but we're not going to have the investigation preliminary to the indictment because we don't have enough evidence to engage
again,
in
but there is
investigation.
evidence. We know
Yes,
the shell companies, we know the direct deposit, we know the payments from Hunter to his dad, we know about the big guy, we know about the payments from Chinese companies, we know that Biden met with these people, we have pictures. There is so much evidence. And again, this is clearly a case of Romney taking Democrat campaign talking points and running with it. And he doesn't care. He doesn't care about Republicans. He doesn't care about and frankly, he doesn't care about the future of the country. And I know people would say, of course Romney cares about the future of the country. Well, obviously not.
Let me talk about consistency here, because to me, we can get into the debate, and I'm going to ask Joe DeGeneva about this. Can he be charged with high crimes and misdemeanors for things that he did as vice president of the United States? America has a right, and it's absolutely essential that we know what Joe Biden was doing as vice president of the United States and the business relationship between his son and his office and his son's clients, in the same way that we needed to know, or we never found out. The greater story during the Obama administration was not Hillary Clinton's emails. It was the relationship between Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton's 2 senior aides who were consultants for Teneo Holdings, the clients of Teneo Holdings who had business with the State Department, and those same clients giving money to the Clinton Foundation to benefit Mr. Clinton and Chelsea Clinton. We never got to the bottom of that, and we had a right as the public to know. Listen, we got so much more to get to right now at 6:23 on WMAL. Listen, we got so much more to talk about on this. We got to talk about this impeachment issue and just what's all involved in it. Going to be joined by Joe DeGeneva as he joins us every Monday morning here on O'Connor and Company. The 8 a.m. hour, going to be joined by Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, as well as Congressman Ben Cline from the Virginia's 6th Congressional District. And In the next half hour, going to be joined by Terry Schilling from the American Principles Project. We're going to talk about this trend, double income, no kids. DINKS, just what does it mean for America? It is 6 a.m. here on WMAL.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now. Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
You know, Julie, it's a phrase that I think I first may have heard when reading the Preppy Handbook in the 1980s. But it's come into greater vogue in the popular zeitgeist. The concept of the DINK, double income, no kids, and it's an issue in America today. You and I, I'm sure we both know people, couples that are double income, no kids, and the lifestyles they lead. Joining us right now is Terry Schilling. He's president of the American Principles Project, a great organization looking at the cultural landscape of America and trying to do something to stop the decline into chaos. Terry, good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, guys. By the way, when I found out who was hosting the show, I almost just hung up the phone and got right off. I can't believe it.
Funny.
It's always
good morning.
Well,
I miss you both.
Well, we appreciate that. You know, listen, both Julie and I are double income families, but we both have lots and lots of kids, so we are not plagued by this issue. This is not just this is not just something to comment on, right? But there's a real danger at work here. Talk about the rise of the DINK couplehood and the problem that it presents, Terry.
No, first of all, it's called extinction, right? If we all just stop having children, there's no more future generations, and you have to actually have more children than just your replacement, because sometimes people die too early before they can have more kids. So you're talking, extinction number one, but you're also talking about paying off the budget, right, and the deficits. More people paying into the system lightens the load for everyone else. It's easier to have $34 trillion with a billion people than it is to have it with 100 million people. But here's where it gets really important, and I experienced this with my own family, is when you die, which you will die someday, you want a group of people around you that are so appreciative for what you contributed to them, right? When you don't have your own children, this is not something anyone should actually choose. We need to let this be God's decision, right? Children are a gift from God, and when you are saying we're purposely not going to have kids, you're playing God, and that never works out for human beings. And that's where the real problem is. You're not going to be fulfilled. I just find it so sad, right? It's not just, you're not going to have kids, you're going to die alone, you're going to make humanity extinct. You don't love your spouse enough to have kids with them, right? What's the point of getting married? You just tied up half of your assets and half of everything you own just because you love someone. You want to go to Disney World once a year with them. It doesn't make any sense. You get married to protect yourself from being abandoned.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Julie.
Andrew, you have your hand up. Do you have a follow-up?
But Terry, is this the follow-on to the increased of the upward rising of adolescence? I guess what I mean is, when you have, it used to be that when you were in your early 20s, mid 20s, you'd get married, you'd have kids. Then it became into the 30s. And, we have this whole culture now that's centered around 30 and 40 somethings who are behaving like adolescents. I mean, this is the natural outcropping of that, isn't it?
It is. And I want to be really clear about something, because this gets repeated. These DINK videos are going viral, and people are saying, good, these selfish people shouldn't be raising kids anyway. That's not how it works. We've adopted this progressive mindset that we are who we always were, right? You were born this way. If you're born a selfish person, you'll always be a selfish person. It's not how it works. We have to get these people getting married and having kids, because having kids forces you to grow up at least a little bit, right?
Terry, I'd like you to speak also too, because I feel like women are victims of this much more than men, because, look, we have a time, no one wants to talk about it, but we do have a biological clock. And I feel like women are misinformed about that biological clock, that you should probably start having kids earlier because it gets harder. Tell me a little bit about that and what we can do to encourage this among women and remind them that, you can't have children. There is a small window where you can have children, and you need need to have them earlier and not later? What can we do to encourage that?
Well, first of all, just remind people that life gets harder as you get older, right? I'm 37. My wife's 38. We have number 7 coming on the way in March. This number 6 was the toughest kid we've had, not number 1,
right? Because
you wake up in the morning and you're more tired, but you do only have a certain amount of time to have children, and you want to have them early. You don't want to be 70 years old going to your kids' baseball games or going to your kids' basketball games. You just really want to give it all to God, right? We need to stop trying to play God ourselves.
Well, these liberal women's organizations never want to talk to women about this, and that to me is what is so unfair. I see women saying, "Well, and I'll have a child in my 40s, but I want to spend my 30s having fun." And I think to them, "Oh my God, they're in for such a terrible reality once they get there, because it is much harder. I'm not just talking about getting out of bed is harder, but having a child is harder simply because you're not as fertile, and that is something that is not told to women."
No, that's exactly right. And there was an article in the New York Times a few years ago about a woman who was in a very similar situation, never got married, had basically put off children, but had frozen her eggs. She realized once she got a phone call one day that the eggs had gone bad, and she was lamenting this. The eggs, they went bad, and she said that she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming in agony out of the loss of never being able to have her own kids.
Sure.
This is important stuff. Just have kids. It's something that human beings have been doing since we were founded, or started. It's just ridiculous. You have to at least replace yourself.
And by the way, it's 2023. You can be an empty nester and still have a lot of fun once your kids grow up and move out of the house. Hey, Terry, before I let you go, did you guys have a good gala last week?
Oh my gosh, we sold out. It was so much fun.
Great.
Brent Bozell embarrassed me on the main stage. It was great. Tucker gave a great speech. We got to see Riley Gaines dunk on Tucker and make fun of him. It was
nice.
Great. It was all
the pictures were amazing.
My
buddy Chris Bedford did a good job as MC.
Oh my gosh, Chris!
Chris
that was the only mistake I made for the night, was having Chris Bedford there. No, I'm kidding. Chris did phenomenal.
Good. Terry, real quick before I let you go, how do folks find out about the American Principles Project?
Just check us out, AmericanPrinciplesProject.org, or you can follow me on Twitter at Schilling1776.
So go check them out. Listen, folks, we got so much more to get to at 6:44 here on WMAL. So we're going to be talking a little later about what's happening on college campuses regarding anti-Semitism. My own alma mater, William & Mary, had a wonderful menorah lighting ceremony on campus on Thursday. A few hundred people showed up for that. That was just wonderful. But in the meantime, there's ongoing developments in the Israel-Hamas war. On Friday, Julie, the U.S. vetoed the Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. vetoed a resolution of the UN Security Council that would have demanded a permanent ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. This, by the way, as Netanyahu is warning that things are starting to happen. Dozens of terrorists surrendered in Gaza. Netanyahu is saying beginning of the end for the terror group. Senior IDF official says signs that Hamas is breaking. Doesn't mean, though, that the war will end soon. I mean, there is a lot going on here. By the way, as was pointed out here, the U.S. blocked the ceasefire resolution. It was backed by most members of the Security Council, which to me underscores once again the illegitimacy of the UN Security Council. I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's remarkable that the Security Council is having a vote on a permanent ceasefire when there are still hostages. Where is the vote on Hamas demanding Hamas return the hostages? No one at the UN. Does anyone talk about the hostages?
No, and really try to work to hold the so-called Palestinians accountable here. And as always, I call them the so-called Palestinians because Palestine and the concept of a Palestinian state is a myth. It is something that has never existed. And so, this identification of these people as Palestinians, I mean, anyway, that's like me sort of making up a definition for where I live in Virginia and declaring my, anyway. So it is just crazy. It's interesting because I had a conversation on Friday for an upcoming podcast with Clifford May, who's the head of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, sort of talking about this issue of international order and these UN organizations that are again perpetuating essentially the surreality. I'm sorry, Julie, go right ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. You're absolutely right. I mean, UN. Go ahead.
No, it's a situation in which we have these narratives that get perpetuated. We have these folks who are positing policies that are completely unworkable in the real world or are based on myths. And is it any wonder, right? So we have a majority of Americans back Israel as the Democrats are split. Have you seen this latest this polling? I know we're going to talk more about this later on, about young people who believe that the
Holocaust is a myth.
Holocaust.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And look, I mean, there are always going to be kooks out there.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, there are people who think the world is flat. Okay.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who think that Trump is a dictator. We've covered that earlier today. I mean, there's always going to be people out there who are nuts. 9/11 was an inside job, all of this stuff. But this is concerning, and it shows that over the last several decades, there has been a de-emphasis in things like teaching kids about the Holocaust and an emphasis on DEI, which is, again, sorting people into oppressors and oppressed. And we know that Israel and the Jews at writ large are considered oppressors within this DEI framework. Yeah. And so this is the danger of this. You have got people who are running around campus tearing down posters of hostages. You've got death to Jews being chanted, and from the river to the sea. And again, I think from the river to the sea is this one exception where an awful lot of the kids that are chanting this have no idea what it means. Right. But this is what DEI brings you. This is Kendi's vision in practice. Right.
And it's interesting, as I talked about this wonderful event that happened at William & Mary on Thursday. At the same time, it was overshadowed or almost overshadowed on Thursday morning by pro-Palestinian graffiti appearing on the university center's doors. I mean, so you take one with you. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit in the 7:30 time.